This lesson is on factoring out the GCF, and we're just looking at basic binomials in this video. So our first binomial is 18x squared minus 9x. The GCF is the greatest common factor. So first we need to figure out what is the GCF in this problem. If we look at the coefficients on the variable, we have 18 and 9. What is the greatest number that can evenly divide into both 18 and 9? A trick on this is looking at the smaller number here and seeing if it divides evenly into the other number. If there were more terms, we would see if it divided evenly into all of the terms. In this case, it does. If it doesn't, then you will have to figure out what to do then. It may be another factor of that number, or there may not be a GCF or a coefficient part of the GCF. In this case, this does work. So 9 is part of our GCF, and we're going to write that down. Let's look at the variable part. We have x squared in the first term and x in the second term. So variables, you're thinking about this a little differently, in that what is in common between these two. So I've got two x's here and only one x here. So I just need one x that's in common, and that will be part of my greatest common factor. One thing to remember is on the variables, you're looking for, number one, that there is a variable in every single term, and number two, you're picking the variable with the lowest exponent, So the first one has to be satisfied though. There has to be a variable in every term, the same variable in every term. And if there is, then which one of those is the lowest exponent? That will be your GCF. Once we've identified the GCF, we want to open parentheses, and we're going to fill in the remaining factor here. So what you're doing is dividing, and you can actually write this 9x in the front. If you do that, then to make this mathematically correct, I would divide by 9x here and here. A lot of times students like seeing this because they can easily see what would be our remaining factor here. So 18 over 9 would just give me 2. And then x squared over x, remember you're subtracting exponents, so 2 minus 1 would just give you 1, and that would 1x is just x, or x to the first is just x. And then minus 9 divided by 9 is 1, and here these x's cancel. So that would be the factored form of 18x squared minus 9x. So your GCF would be 9x, your remaining factor is 2x minus 1. Let's look at the next one. So I have 7x minus 21. So we need to identify our GCF. Let's try that little trick I gave you. Does the smaller number evenly divide into the bigger number? Does 7 divide evenly into 21? Yes, it does. So 7 will be part of our GCF. Let's think about the variables rules. Is there a variable in every term? That answer is no. So because there's not a variable in every term, then there is not a variable part of our GCF. So 7 is our GCF in this problem. Once we know that 7 is our GCF, we can factor that out, dividing each of these terms by 7. And let's see what our remaining factor will be. 7 divided by 7 is just 1, and 1x is just x. Minus 21 divided by 7 is 3. So that is our factored form, 7 times x minus 3, and that one's finished. Let's look at our last example. I have negative 8x squared minus 8x. So looking at our coefficient part, well, we have the same number in both of these terms, so that's pretty obvious that's in common. Let's put that in the front. But we have a special rule for GCF. If our first term in our expression is negative, then our GCF, we also want to make it negative. And this helps out in a lot of different problems, not just these types of problems. So our GCF, even if this was positive, if our first term in the expression is negative, your GCF is negative. It does not matter this sign. Okay, we're just going to follow this rule based on the first term you see. All right, so that's our coefficient part. Let's look at the variable part. Is there a variable in every term? Yes. What is the lowest exponent on that variable? This is 2, this is 1, 1 is the lowest, so our GCF is just going to contain the x. All right, now that we know that's our GCF, we'll put that in front and then divide it out of both of these factors. And let's see what we get. This is interesting. So -8 divided by -8, that's just 1. And then x squared divided by x is just x to the first. So 1x to the first would just give us x. Here, -8 divided by -8 is also just 1, but it's positive. And then x divided by x would cancel out. So this is our remaining factor, x plus 1, and our whole thing is -x, parentheses x plus 1. So that's factored out the GCF. So just remember that little rule I told you about that negative sign.